Welcome back to Chapter 6 of Armageddon 2419 AD, the Wyoming Massacre.
They're coming out of the ship.
I spoke quietly with my hand over my mouth for fear they might hear me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That seems to be all. Who knows how many men a ship like that is likely to carry?
About 10, if there are no passengers, replied one of my men, probably one of those on the hillside.
How are they armed?
Just knives, came the reply. They never permit hand raise on the ships, afraid of accidents, having a ruling against it.
Leave them to us then,
I said, for I had hastily formed a plan in my mind.
You, on the hillsides, take the ships above. Abandon the ring target. Divide up in training on those repeller rays. You, on the hilltops, all train on the repellers of the ships to the south. Shoot at the word, but not before. Wilma, crawl over to your left, where you can make a straight leap for the door in that ship. These men are all walking around the wreck in a bunch. When they're on the far side, I'll give you the word, and you leap through that door in one bound. I'll follow. Maybe we won't be seen. We'll overpower the guard inside, but don't shoot. We may escape being seen by both this crew and ships above. They can't see over this wreck.
So it was so easy that it seemed too good to be true. The Hans, who had emerged from the ship, walked round the wreckage, lazily, talking in guttural tones, keenly interested in the wreck, but quite unsuspicious. At last, they were on the far side. In a moment, they would be picking their way into the wreck.
Wilma, leap!
I almost whispered the order. The distance between Wilma's hiding place and the door in the side of the Han ship was not more than 15 feet. She was already crouched with her feet braced against a metal beam. Taking the lift of that wonderful inertron belt into her calculation, she dove headforemost like a green projectile through the door. I followed in a split second, more clumsily, but no less speedily, bruising my shoulder painfully as I ricocheted from the edge of the opening and brought up the sliding against the unconscious girl, for she evidently had hit her head against the partition within the ship into which she had crashed. We had made some noise within the ship. Shuffling footsteps were approaching down a well-lit gangway.
Any signs we have been observed? I asked my man on the hillsides.
Not yet,
I heard the boss reply.
Ships overhead, still standing. No beams have been broken out. Men on ground, absorbed in wreck. Most of them have crawled into it, out of sight.
Good, I said quickly. Deering hit her head, knocked out. One or more members of the crew approaching. We're not discovered yet. I'll take care of them. Stand a bit longer, but be ready.
I think my last words must have been heard by the man who was approaching, for he stopped suddenly. I crouched at the far side of the compartment, motionless. I would not draw my sword if there were only one of them. He would be a weakling, I figured, and I should easily overcome him with my bare hands. Apparently reassured at the absence of any further sound, a man came around a sort of bulkhead, and I leaped. I swung my legs up in front of me as I did so, catching him full in the stomach and knocked him cold. I ran forward along the keel gangway, searching for the control room. I found it well up in the nose of the ship, and it was deserted. What could I do to jam the controls of the ships that would not register on the recording instruments of the other ships? I gazed at the mass of controls, levers, and wheels galore. In the center of the compartment, on a massively braced universal joint mounting, was what I took for the repeller generator. A dial on it glowed, and a faint hum came from within its shielding metallic case, but I had no time to study it. Above all else, I was afraid that some automatic telephone apparatus existed in the room through which I might be heard on the other ships. The risk of trying to jam the controls was too great I abandoned the idea and withdrew softly. I would have to take a chance that there was no other member of the crew aboard. I ran back to the entrance compartment. Wilma still lay where she had slumped down. I heard the voices of the Hans approaching. It was time to act. The next few seconds would tell whether the ships in the air would try and be able to melt us into nothingness. I spoke.
Are you boys all ready?
I asked, creeping to a position opposite the door and drawing my handgun. Again, there was a chorus of assent.
Then, on the count of three, shoot up those repeller rays. All of them. And for God's sake, don't miss.
And I counted. I think my three was a bit weak. I know it took all the courage I had to utter it. For an agonizing instant, nothing happened, except that the landing party from the ship strolled into my range of vision. Then, startled, they turned their eyes upward. For an instant, they stood frozen with horror at whatever they saw. One hurled his knife at me. It grazed my cheek. Then a couple of them made a break for the doorway. The rest followed. But I fired point blank with my handgun, pressing the button as fast as I could and aiming at their feet to make sure my explosive rockets would make contact and do their work. The detonations of my rockets were deafening. The spot on which the Hans stood flashed into a blinding glare. Then there was nothing there except their torn and mutilated corpses. They had been fairly bunched, and I got them all. I ran to the door, expecting any instant to be hurled into infinity by the sweep of a disintegrator ray. Some eighth of a mile away, I saw one of the ships crash to the earth. A disintegrator ray came into my line of vision, wavered uncertainly for a moment, and then began to sweep directly toward the ship in which I stood. But it never reached it. Suddenly, like a light switched off, it shot to one side, and a moment later, a vast hulk crashed to earth. I looked out, then stepped out on the ground. The only Han ships in the sky were two of the scouts to the south, which were hanging perpendicularly and sagging slowly down. The others must have crashed down while I was deafened by the sound of the explosion of my own rockets. Somebody hit the other repeller ray of one of the two remaining ships, and it fell out of sight beyond a hilltop. The other, farther away, drifted down diagonally, its disintegrator ray playing viciously over the ground below it. I shouted with exultation and relief. Take back the command, boss, I yelled. His commands, sending out jumpers in pursuit of the descending ship, rang in my ears, but I paid no attention to them. I leaped back into the compartment of the Han ship and knelt beside my Wilma. Her padded helmet had absorbed much of the blow, I thought. Otherwise, her skull might have been fractured. Oh, my head, she groaned, coming to as I lifted her gently in my arms and strode out in the open air with her. We must have won, dearest, did we? We most certainly did, I reassured her. All but one crashed, and that one is drifting down toward the south. We've captured this one. We're intact. There was only one member of the crew aboard when we dove in. Less than an hour afterward, the big boss ordered the outfit to tune in ultraphones on 323 to pick up a translated broadcast of the Han intelligence office in New York from the Susquehanna station. It was in the form of a public warning and news item and read as follows. This is a public intelligence office, New York, broadcasting warning to navigators of private ships and news of public interest. The squadron of 7 ships which left New York this morning to investigate the recent destruction of the GK-984 in the Wyoming Valley has been destroyed by a series of mysterious explosions similar to those wrecked the GK-984, the phones, viewplates, and all other signaling devices of 5 of the 7 ships ceased operating suddenly at approximately the same moment, about 7:49, according to the Han system of reckoning time, 7:49 and 100ths after midnight. After Violent disturbances. The location finders went out of operation. Electroactivity registers applied to the territory of the Wyoming Valley remain dead.